Home CannaBama.
Change doesn't wait. Why should you? Welcome to the Gaia Guild. Global Action Impact Awareness. At GaiaGuild.com, thousands are coming together. Creators, innovators, changemakers, building a future that matters. Your membership unlocks events, classes, and connections that spark action. And explore the G3 collection and exclusive guild merch at GaiaGuild.shop. This isn't just talk, it's movement in action. Gaia Guild. Join today. Become a guilder. Visit GaiaGuild.shop.
Let's take a ride down Kentucky's regulated road, man.
I grew up in Lebanon, Kentucky, and when I was in middle school, all these parents of my classmates started getting arrested for this organized marijuana growing syndicate that was known as the Cornbread Mafia. 70 guys from Kentucky were arrested on 30 farms in 10 states with 200 tons of marijuana between 1985 and 1989. And so I knew that these stories had a currency in the culture. Like, it wasn't just a great story from where we were from. People needed to know this story. It was important for Americans to know that this happened where it did and who it happened to. It was a good story. And after coming back home from school, I wanted to tell that story to the world and went about writing the first nonfiction account of the Cornbread Mafia.
As Jim's cousin, I've seen Jim go through 6 years of writing the book to then publishing the book. And here we are 10 years later. Jim knows the farmers, he knows Kentucky Hemp, and he knows the story. And I knew customer service, website, direct to consumer, all that stuff. And so the light bulb clicked when we started talking about it.
He literally wrote the book on Kentucky's illegal marijuana industry.
My reporting in this space really helped me understand that Kentucky is the best place in the country to grow hemp. Based on the work, based on the journalism, based on the connections that I made along the way, I became an expert at every facet of this industry, from the culture and the history to the current production, to the current politics and policy, to the current industry standards.
When we looked around the industry and saw the brands and the quality of the product and the customer service and the websites that were out there, it was fascinating.
The CBD industry was the Wild West. There was a lot of bad actors making bad products and giving the industry a bad reputation.
The way I've always seen great businesses run is with people out in front, providing quality service and a quality product. And every single brand we looked at was the complete opposite of that. And so we felt like we had to do the industry justice by jumping in and providing a template, really, for how a CBD company should be operated the right way.
So when we started this company, we knew it was an uphill battle. This was a David and Goliath story. We had to outperform. And the only way we could do that is with the best product. And so we set about to make the best products. And the way we got there is by being the first Kentucky company to offer USDA certified organic CBD products, using only the flowers in our extraction process, extracting them only with organic sugarcane ethanol, blending it only with organic medium chain coconut oil. These are the steps where we don't take shortcuts, where we bring this plant in its most wholesome fashion into a bottle, into a product, directly to our customers.
At the end of the day, a review will come in from someone just saying, like, this product changed my life. Thank you. What more can you ask for?
We get feedback all the time from customers that tell us that our products are helping them anecdotally through this period of time, and that our products mean a lot to them, and they come back to us every month, and that means everything. It's about taking the story and combining it with the plant and the products to communicate to people that something is great here, and we do it really, really well.
It's just our commitment to really the three principles: product quality, customer service, and transparency. And that's why we're here.
It's time for Sweet Home CannaBama, a show that'll answer all your questions, provide accurate information, and dispel the myths of cannabis. And have your specific questions answered by emailing Jennifer@CannaBama.com or text or call 343-0106. And now, for all things cannabis in Alabama, here's your host, Jennifer Boozer.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm your host, Jennifer Boozer Stewart. We are broadcasting tonight live out of Mobile, Alabama on FM Talk 106.5 here every Monday night for over 6.5 years. And we are live streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn. So if you are watching, hit the subscribe button, the share button, and let your friends and family in on the latest information about the hemp and cannabis industry in Alabama and beyond. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the beyond because, oh boy, Alabama. The only new news in Alabama is that Huntsville is now going to make it even more difficult for the hemp businesses that are currently doing business, waiting on a license. They're going to have to possibly move their locations based on the laws around package stores, since some of these businesses are having to take on liquor with their hemp products in order to get a license. That is fresh off the press news. And also, I literally did an interview today with Fox 10 at 2 p.m. about HB 445 and this ordinance that the city of Mobile was offering hemp businesses within the city limits to give them a 90-day window as long as they have an active ABC application, all their products are compliant with HB 445, and they're in good standing, so that they don't have to wait more and more weeks and weeks as they have been since January 1st. And I swear, y'all, as soon as I hung up with that reporter, I get on the phone with another business owner in Mobile, and he said, yeah, they just told me that's not a thing anymore. So as quick as they offered it, they rescinded that. And that is really not great news for anybody doing business in Mobile. And the more and more this situation unfolds, y'all, much as I need an income, I am really starting to be thankful that I am not still in that and struggling, because, man, every brick wall you can conceive of, and probably 5 you can't, just keeps coming and hitting them in the face. And, I don't know what's going on. I know that the ag department hemp classes started for anybody who plans on growing hemp. And from what I could see, only 13 people showed up to that meeting. So hemp farming in Alabama is looking like a really, really sad situation. So we're not going to talk about Alabama anymore tonight. We're going to move on to states who have some sense and some legislators that will actually listen to you. It's funny. I keep saying, I've had extensive conversations and interviews with legislators in other states, and I can't get the ones in my own state to give me the time of day. and even was told someone would sponsor a bill for me and then went ghost on me. So I don't know what's up with that, Alabama, but whew, man, if I wasn't grounded here, I told Martin I might have to move to Kentucky because this is crazy. But anyway, moving right along, tonight we're going to talk about Kentucky because Kentucky is moving, and it's moving fast with legislation that protects the farmers, protects the consumers, and prepares the entire hemp industry for the future. You know, there's so much uncertainty up in the air. Everything is up in the air. We've got big organizations, trying to get extensions on this continuing resolution situation from November. And it seems like all of the states, especially in the Southeast, have sort of gone topsy-turvy. And a lot of it we brought on ourselves. So we want to right the ship, and we want to do it well. And Kentucky farmers are positioned to lead the nation in full spectrum CBD production because of their General Assembly understood something simple. If you protect the farmer, you protect the customer. And if you protect both, you protect the entire industry. And so tonight I have two guests. You guys know Martin Smith pretty well by now if you're a regular listener, but Martin is the president of the Kentucky Hemp Farmers Association and the founder of the American Medical Hemp Association. He's worked directly with the General Assembly, helping shape HB 532, and author of the loophole language that created today's intoxicating market nationwide. He's also the one working with Representative Moser, who we have spoken to here on the show, through the Agriculture Committee to finalize the committee substitute, the backbone of HB 532. And so tonight, he's here to walk us through the committee language and why it matters. But we also have a very special guest tonight, who is someone you may have heard of, either him or his brand, but Jim Higdon, co-founder of Cornbread Hemp and author of the book Cornbread Mafia. It's a definitive book on Kentucky's outlaw cannabis history, which I have been learning about from Martin, and it's fascinating. But it includes characters like Jimmy Boone and others who shaped the culture. Jim was recently selected as chairman of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, representing national stakeholders, and he's the driving force behind SB 223, Kentucky's cannabis-infused beverage bill. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Alabama has very few farmers positioned to grow hemp in 2026, but Kentucky, on the other hand, will be ready to meet the demand, not just for Alabama and Kentucky, but for any other state that requires products. Kentucky's always been a leader in this industry. And Representative Moser listened to the farmers, understood their barriers, wrote legislation that moves the industry away from criminalization and towards civil agricultural solutions. So tonight we're going to talk about the Kentucky model, HB 532 and SB 223, and why it matters for every hemp producing state in America. So let's get started with you, Martin. We've got a lot of ground to cover. So, review HB 532, remind us about this bill, and then tell us about this committee sub.
Yeah, so I appreciate you having us tonight. And man, I'm really glad to see Jim Higdon on here. He's him and his brand, and being vertically integrated from the farm to the to the consumer product, and having a desire to get things right. If we're going to get it right, we might as well get it right in our markets. And that's HB 532 is designated to be a protection bill. Basically, what it does is it creates for us a standard, a high standard for medical grade, which gives the country and those consumers a framework for what is medical grade, and how do we manage that. And so it's all about testing and making sure that it's right. It does inside of the bill is it protects the farmer from having issues like if your crop gets too hot, and
right.
It's there's other things that create variables in agriculture that now that we've done it for this long, we know these things are variables. And so the bill puts a framework together for remediation, right, which allows you to, instead of having a criminalization of your farmers, which is just, outrageous when you think about they're, so very little over the, threshold, and they're losing their livelihoods in the future. So, and then it creates the destabilization of our industry. We saw it. And then from there, created a gap for China to send in isolates and other products that just the consumer was unaware of. And so what we're trying to do in Kentucky is say, if you get it from Kentucky, you get a great product, and signal to the rest of the industry that this is the way moving forward. And that's our hopes with HB 532. It's really just to create the model for the marketplace and align ourselves with President Trump's executive order, and the Medicare, reimbursement program, so that's ready. And then Jim called me one day, and we texted back and forth, and he said, I don't know if I can agree with HB 332 as it's written. And so I was like, well, tell me about it, because it was when it was filed in a way that basically sets the stage for the committee sub, where the committee sub, what happened with my hijacking of the language that happened back in 2016 that created the loophole was I was just trying to protect and give us a definition for what a legal extract was.
Right.
And then, of course, once you got that framework in, the world turned it into Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10, Delta, and created all of those products because of the legal definition.
Right.
So that was 2017 HB here in Kentucky with HB 448. And then the language got adopted into the 2018 Farm Bill, and the rest is history.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure I created a process that knew exactly what the intentions were to protect the farmer and to create a standard that the federal government and consumers could trust. And so we had a lot of chaos in the past, and we're trying to avoid it. And that's what HB 532 does.
Right. We've talked before about, how I've seen when you're a retailer, especially when you're early on in the game, we saw things. I'm like, what in the heck is all this stuff? We've got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more with Martin Smith and Jim Higdon. Stay with us.
Ask the Sheriff on FM Talk 106.5.
We didn't know what to expect. We were just left in a hotel.
My mom was doing drugs in the house.
Tay and Brianna spent years of their childhood in homes that weren't safe. They were placed in foster care and longed for a permanent, loving home.
I didn't know what my future was.
I wouldn't speak to anyone. I was afraid of everything.
With help from the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption, Brianna and Tay were adopted and now feel excited about their futures.
I'm studying to be a chef, and I really want to travel the world.
I'm going to be a mechanic, and I can focus on my career.
Right now, in the United States, there are more than 100,000 children in foster care, just like Brianna and Tay, who need a family now. Learn how you can help at davethomasfoundation.org.
Ask the Sheriff on FM Talk 106.5.
It's your chance to ask the sheriff, Mobile County Sheriff Paul Birch. Always fun to be here.
Community questions.
Well, what do I do about this or that? You've got the sheriff here.
Community answers.
People who are deciding they're going to buy a gun for protection. What kind of gun I want to shoot, what I do with it.
That is another program I started, is our arms familiarization course.
Ask the Sheriff, now every second Thursday through May on Midday Mobile with FM Talk 106.5. Welcome back to Sweet Home CannaBama. Now with all the information you want about cannabis, here's your host, Jennifer Boozer.
Welcome back, everybody, to Sweet Home CannaBama. We're talking with Martin Smith and Jim Higdon, both in Kentucky, about HB 532 and SB 223. Martin, I want to get back to what we were just talking about. We're basically, HB 532 is meant to create a medical grade standard for growing, processing, packaging, and testing so that we are prepared when this Medicare program of reimbursement
comes along, they're not going to accept any old product, because in the last 7 years, we've given them plenty of reason not to trust the industry at large for reasons that you were just talking about, and all of these outlier products and combinations like CBDJ, whatever that is. Some of them flabbergast me, because I don't even know where to begin, especially as a retailer who's not a chemist in the processing lab or a farmer growing, and some of this stuff is just way out in left field. So we've given a lot of people reason not to just blanket trust what we're doing in the hemp market. And that's something that we have to fix. But this bill is meant to stabilize that, create a high standard, and be ready so that when these elderly people on Medicare come in to buy these products, they can feel confident, and so can Medicare, that they're not going to get heavy metals and mold, mildew, mycotoxins, or some kind of Chinese isolate like what you were discussing, and because God knows what that would look like, And so that is what this is for, to stabilize the supply chain and then make these products available safely, legally, and make sure that we are doing our due diligence every single step of the way. I'm super excited to talk to Jim, because I know he is, I believe that video, he is the first USDA certified organic brand in Kentucky, which is, those are pretty rare.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay. So Jim, I want to introduce you, and by asking you, I want to know a little bit about your personal story. We saw the video in the beginning of the stream, and but everybody that is in the hemp industry did something first. Most of us, have been around long enough that we had some sort of career or job before this. And then something happened that transitioned us into this most, I don't know. It's amazing. And it's also like the hardest thing most of us have ever done. But tell us a little bit about your journey into this and why you do what you do.
Thank you, Jennifer. I am going to get into that, but I just want to say, I love the good people of Southern Alabama. We vacation down in Orange Beach. Shout out to Laird-Hughes Seafood in Orange Beach, Alabama. Really, I really look forward to getting down there every chance I get.
Well, and I live about 20 minutes from there. And yesterday, my daughter and I got to go to the beach for a few hours. And I told Martin, I texted him from the beach. I said, I meet people everywhere I go. And wouldn't you know, the very first person I struck up a conversation with was a lady from Kentucky.
Yeah, we get down that way. The Gulf Shores, Orange Beach area.
Yes. We are very fond of our redneck Riviera down here.
Every SEC team's got a tent on the beach. It's all like a tailgate party out there.
Absolutely, all the time. Yes, roll tide.
You also broke news to me. I didn't know what you told me about Mobile and that grace period they were going to grant licensees. Heard about that. Was looking forward to it. Working towards it. We were in the fight against HB 445 last year. And
I remember that. Yes.
And it took away all of our direct-to-consumer customers in Alabama, and which was heartbreaking for us. I just, my heart goes out to the good people of Alabama just getting raked over the coals on this stuff.
Right. Well, my business, CannaBama, was the very first hemp dispensary in Alabama, and we had to close. So, yeah. And I got calls for probably at least 3 months. Every single day, multiple times a day, got calls. What are we going to do? I'm having nightmares again. I can't sleep. My hands hurt. I'm having panic attacks. I'm in pain. What do I do? Where do I go? And it's when you go from helping people in sometimes miraculous ways, we get to witness some amazing things in what we do. And when you go from 7 years, 7 days a week to having to say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. I mean, I cried with them. And it feels like, your hands are tied behind your back and you can't do anything. It's not a great feeling.
Right. So that's why we're doing everything we can to not have to feel that way. And so we can get this stuff right.
That's absolutely right. And set the standard, because somebody has to be the leader. And of course, I would have loved for Alabama to join Kentucky, and that was my intention. And not a single legislator. It's an election year, so we're voting on license plate designs and things that don't matter, so that nobody ruffles any feathers. But anyway, back to you. So let's talk about your personal story and how you got into this and because I want people to understand the quality standard that Cornbread Hemp has, because I know you guys are as diligent as any other company I've ever seen. And I want them to know that they should be willing to help fight for these products to stay available.
So, like you said, I grew up in a town called Lebanon, Kentucky, in Marion County, which had the notorious distinction of being the headquarters of the Cornbread Mafia. And what that meant was that between 1985 and 1989, 70 men from my community were arrested on 30 farms in 10 states with what the government said was 200 tons of outlaw outdoor cannabis.
Wow.
Of those 70 that were caught, none of them talked or cooperated with federal officials in the investigation. And consequently, it left the prosecutors with a case that it could not wage in court because there was no witnesses to point the fingers at the kingpins that they thought that they knew who they were.
Wow.
So in the summer of 1989, instead of taking it to court, prosecutors held a press conference and laid out their case to the media and didn't give anyone a chance to defend themselves. And in the course of that press conference, prosecutors referred to this group as the Cornbread Mafia. And that's the name that stuck. And 20 years went by and still no one would talk about it. The code of silence, the culture of silence that permeated my community. Marion County is the only Catholic majority county in the South.
Wow.
It's a tight-knit Catholic rural community, and we created a culture unto ourselves, in part because of alcohol prohibition. So in 1919, when alcohol prohibition went into effect, Marion County had 9 active distilleries, all worked by Catholic men who had literally a dozen children each. And when they were put out of work, they had a choice to make. They could let their kids go hungry or they could break the law.
Right.
And so therefore, a culture of permissiveness surrounded various kinds of law breaking, but not others. And my county, my community got along that way for several generations. And then marijuana showed up after the Vietnam War.
Right.
And all they could do was grow it and not get caught. And not getting caught was something that they did very well.
Right. So, that was their specialty.
that was like the home enterprise. So,
I would love to know the reasoning behind 70 different individual human beings that none of them would snitch. That is wildly loyal. That's crazy.
It was baked in. When the revenuers would come into their grandparents' houses, when their grandparents were children, to take the still away, the only thing that a kid can do in that scenario to protect the family is keep their mouth shut.
Yeah.
And it was a lesson and a notion that was passed down that was very important. And loyalty to family and the community was more important. And
right.
The federal government, especially in its enforcement wing, were outsiders, not to be trusted and not to be dealt with. It's a tight-knit farming community.
Right. Well, and until the prevalence of the internet and our connectedness to people outside of our communities, that is all you had was your community, your family, the people right there in a tight radius to rely on. And families were much more interconnected and entwined and heavily involved in their local churches and schools and things like that. It's just not the same anymore because we're so worried about what people in other states think about our social media that we're in our phones instead of looking people in the eye across the table, and having, breaking bread and having that camaraderie and that loyalty. Sure. I live 6 hours away from my family. So, my kids grew up without that sense of family, but that definitely lends itself to the secrecy that they were taught as small children, and it stuck. Teach a child in a way he should go, right?
20 years went by and no one did anything about it. And I came home after going off to college and wrote a book about it. Did a deep dive investigative journalism book on how this stuff went. I opened records requests with the FBI and the DEA and deep historical research, and really put all this together, not just as a true crime tale, but as a cultural history of this place that I'm from.
Right.
And proud of it, and it's done really well for nonfiction books of its kind.
Right.
And that led me into a career as a journalist covering cannabis. And then I was covering the 2018 Farm Bill and saw this opportunity to get out of the bleachers and into the game.
Right.
And partnered with my cousin, Eric Zipperly, and founded Cornbread Hemp at the end of 2018.
Nice. Well, and it's funny because you don't ever think, when you think of the cultural history of cannabis since the 1930s and reefer madness and all that, you don't typically think of Kentucky, but that's a massive amount of crime and influence. You said 10 states, that 200 tons, that's a pretty big story in the cultural history of the plant. So that's fascinating.
Yeah, you got to think they were running from the helicopters. So
right.
The first time the Kentucky State Police flew a helicopter for marijuana operations, they flew it over Marion County, and in one weekend they found 42 acres.
Oh wow. We've got to go to another break. When we come back, we're going to talk more with Martin and Jim. Stay with us.
FM Talk 106.5, the Gulf Coast Weather Authority, and Dr. Bill Williams.
The Gulf Coast can expect patchy fog tonight. Low temperatures will be in the upper 50s at daybreak. For Tuesday, morning fog, then mostly sunny with highs in the upper 70s. And the outlook for Wednesday, morning fog again, then mostly sunny with afternoon readings in the upper 70s. This is meteorologist Dr. Bill Williams for FM Talk 106.5.
Good afternoon. I'm Peter Albrecht, WKRG News 5. A deadly shooting in Mobile just before noon today. It happened a few blocks northeast of Ziegler and Cody on Valdez Drive. Police say they have detained a man, but no arrest yet. The victim's name has not been released. One lane of the Cochran Africatown Bridge will be closed for an indefinite amount of time after a crane hit the bridge. According to ALDOT, the accident happened yesterday. A crane that was being moved along the water made contact with the bridge. Airport officials in Gulf Shores say about 16,000 passengers traveled through the airport in January and February. 77,000 travelers used the new terminal last year. In sports, South Alabama has lost Friday night at home to Southern Miss costly as the Jags will enter the Sun Belt Conference tournament as the number 6 seed. They'll have to win 4 games to win the title. Their first game is Friday in Pensacola at 7:30. With local coverage you can count on, I'm Peter Albrecht, WKRG News 5.
It's election season, and the Greater Mobile Links, in partnership with the League of Women Voters, NAACP, Mobile United, Bishop State Community College, and National Panhellenic Council, are excited to link up the vote for 2026. Join us for a free, nonpartisan candidate forum where voters will ask the questions that matter most to Mobile. We look forward to seeing you on Thursday, April 9th at 5:30 at Bishop State. Learn more about this forum at greatermobilelinks.org.
Welcome back to Sweet Home CannaBama. Now with all the information you want about cannabis, here's your host, Jennifer Boozer.
Welcome back, everybody, to Sweet Home CannaBama every Monday night right here on FM Talk 106.5. And we are also live streaming on YouTube and all of the social media. So share this, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and help us spread the word. Tonight, we're talking with Martin Smith and Jim Higdon of Martin is the president of the Kentucky Hemp Farmers Association and founder of the American Medical Hemp Association. And Jim is the founder of Cornbread Hemp and author of the book Cornbread Mafia. We were just discussing. That's a fascinating story. I have got to go and get this book. But I know a lot about HB 532. Obviously, I'm working with Martin on, we were working on trying to get it done in Alabama too. So I'm very familiar with that bill, not so much SB 232. So I want you to give the audience a chance to hear it from you. Tell us about this bill, what it involves, and why it matters.
Sure. So we came back to the legislature this year. Well, first of all, just to contextualize, I'm sure your audience understands where we're at here.
Right.
We're on a 1-year deadline for Mitch McConnell in the federal appropriations bill that passed in the government shutdown in November.
Right.
That puts on a ticking clock of 365 days before all the products made from hemp with any amount of THC become Schedule 1 narcotics on November 13th of this year.
Right.
And then a month later, President Trump signs an executive order.
Right.
The newsy part was moving all of cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 and urging Congress to protect full spectrum CBD and opening this Medicare pilot program.
Yeah.
That would allow for reimbursements for Medicare beneficiaries up to $500 a year for therapeutic hemp products, which is a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
The pilot project, as it envisions starting out, is going to be very narrow. It seems like it's going to be, just for oncology, just for cancer patients. So therefore, probably just CBD oils for those sorts of consumers. But with time and working out the details, it could be a $30 billion addition to the industry.
Right.
And all that money comes back in the end to the farmers who are growing the crop. And the challenge is that the executive order by the president does not change the McConnell hemp ban. It just urges Congress to fix it.
Right.
So we're opening a Medicare pilot program in April in order to make them all criminalized in November, unless Congress decides between now and then to do something about it.
Right.
And we hope that we could have gotten something in the appropriations package that passed in January, and we were unsuccessful at that. So now, not only do we have to coalesce around a plan, we're working on a 2-year extension sponsored by Jim Baird from Indiana with 30 co-sponsors and counting. But we need a vehicle for that plan.
Right.
We need a relevant piece of legislation that is going to pass both chambers of Congress and get to the president's desk for a signature. And we're already kind of too late for our farmers. Our farmers are planning for the farm now.
Right.
As Martin gets.
Right.
We need H-2A visa contracts for workers signed last month. And those contracts either they rolled the dice and signed them, or they decided not to.
Right.
A lot of hemp farmers have hemp in the barn because their buyers broke their contracts at the end of last year, didn't buy last year's crop, even though there's contracts for it, and now they have to decide if they're going to grow again this year, when there's a high probability that the crop will become a Schedule 1 narcotic while it's hanging in the barn.
Right. And the planting, we're talking about May and June is when they would need to be able to start planting, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Martin can tell you, but we like to get plants in the ground in mid-May, but then it always rains, and so they come in. We get them in early June.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I live in subtropical Alabama on the Gulf Coast, so it's a monsoon May.
We've had a couple wet Mays in a row, so we like to get them in, before Memorial Day if we can.
Right.
And so that's the reality that we're facing, and there's lots of different approaches to how we move out of it. Cornbread and the U.S. Hemp Roundtable and other advocacy organizations are working on Capitol Hill trying to figure out a path forward, and increasingly there's a lot of determination to get something done.
Right.
But the vehicle, the method by which we get something through Congress while dealing with war in Iran and a whole host of other things that continue to take priority over our issue is going to be difficult and challenging.
It will,
So that's all preface to the bill that we're supporting and working towards, which is Senate Bill 223 in Kentucky. And it just does something modest and simple. What we're asking legislators in Kentucky to do is to give the hemp industry a vote of confidence by voting in favor of a modest improvement on the regulatory framework that was put in place last year in SB 202. And SB 202 was exclusively targeted at hemp beverages, the hemp beverage market, as you know, all too well, you know, what's gone on with hemp beverages. And among the things that it did, it capped potency to 5 milligrams of THC, and it eliminated on-premise sales by the drink. And it took away the ability for most retailers to sell by the package, except for liquor stores. So only liquor stores can sell 5 milligram THC beverages, and there's no on-premise sales, and no one else can buy them.
Yeah.
They did allow us to keep direct-to-consumer sales, which was nice of them.
Right.
And so what SB 223 seeks to do is restore on-premise sales of hemp THC beverages,
right,
and to grant hemp retailers the right to sell hemp beverages by the package. And then some small things like, of all the things that they decided to do to us last year, they forgot to ban open containers in motor vehicles. And so we would like to ban open containers in motor vehicles because we don't want our product involved in something unfortunate.
Right.
And so,
that never even occurred to me. You know, we just have, we've got some really new strict laws. Ours are 10 milligrams, but I never even thought about the open container part. That's a good point.
So, so what we're asking lawmakers in Kentucky to do is to support this bill, but implicitly passing a bill that envisions a future for this product means that they're voting in favor of us figuring this out in Congress,
right?
By the end of the year.
Yeah.
So it's, like the other bill that we're tracking in Kentucky is a tax bill. It's called HB 612, and it's a wholesale re-envisioning of the alcohol tax scheme that eliminates the beer, wine, and spirit sections that the tax code has always had. The beer had a lower tax than spirits. Wine was somewhere in the middle.
Right.
And so they have reworked that tax scheme entirely to have it all based on alcohol by volume. Like the amount of alcohol that's in the product is what's being taxed.
Yes.
So that it's on a sliding scale and a range, lower potency alcohol products like beers and spirit-based ready-to-drink cocktails in cans are taxed at a lower rate than wine, taxed at a lower rate than spirits, but it's on a sliding scale based on potency.
Right.
Which, frankly, is probably a better way to do that. But it's, I think, unique and novel and a first time sort of tax scheme. It's they're working something out that could be revolutionary. And they're trying to plug hemp beverages, hemp products into the same tax scheme once they have that worked out. And what they did was they're taxing us or proposing to tax us 16 cents per milligram of THC.
Yep. I saw that. I just saw that recently because I was thinking I hadn't heard of this bill, but when you said 16 cents, boy, because I read on like a $24.99 package of gummies, there would be like a $32 tax on it or something crazy like that.
You saw my press release. So that's exactly right. 10 milligram gummies in a 20 count container has 200 milligrams of THC in the container. That's a $32 tax on that product that sells for $40.
Yeah.
So, and so what we think happened is that somewhere along the way, there was a math error because, for instance, in comparison, Tennessee has a similar tax. Tennessee's potency tax is 2 cents per milligram of THC, and that's a reasonable tax rate. We think that there was a math error and that it was meant to be 1.6 cents per milligram of THC, which would make a 5 milligram beverage have an 8 cent tax, which would be on par with what a 5% ABV beer would have in the tax scheme that they're proposing. So we've talked to bill sponsors about fixing fixing that. And so we're hopeful we can get the taxes fixed in that so that we can support that bill, because we do, like, you know, we want taxes on the product in an appropriate way. We want licensing fees for retailers to support, you know, the government regulating these products.
Right.
But a liquor license is $200 and a hemp beverage license is $2,000.
Right.
We've got to fix that.
Right. It's almost punitive on the front end for the retailer and punitive on the back end for the consumer, you know, and you have to price adjust for all of that. And I get it. In Alabama, it's a 10% blanket tax. So such as the city of Mobile, where there's 10% sales tax for state, city, county, now it will be 20% on hemp products, you know, which is, you know, that's double the taxes. So, but you're right. We do want fees. You know, I tried to get the Alabama Ag Department to have a retailer's license set up in 2019 because I was afraid people would sell to kids, people would do the wrong thing, people would sell garbage products, and it would give all of us a black eye, and it did. You know, but we want money available for enforcement because we want them to enforce on the guy who insists on doing it the wrong way, because he's putting what we're trying to do in danger. And it's like being able to, you know, it took a while for it to set in, but when it set in, it was like a hammer coming down nationwide, especially heavy in the Southeast. And it was like watching what you were trying to avoid come to fruition. And it's like, I tried to tell you people, you know, there's the ones of us that always wanted to do it right and wanted to make sure everybody was on the up and up. And then there was everybody else. And it was too easy because there was no retailer's license that you had to apply for or pay for. Anybody could sell it. And that's where things started to go real sideways, in my opinion.
Right. I mean, you know, it's been tough to watch.
Yeah.
And tough to experience. Like, it can be done right. And I don't think that, I believe there's good faith on the part of the tax committee and the bill sponsors here. They want to maximize revenue for the state. Kentucky is trying to reduce income tax, working to reduce income tax. So we have to find. Yeah,
you have to find a way to fill those cracks.
And I believe that there's good faith in getting the taxes right to increase the tax base by not overtaxing the product and not overburdening retailers with too high of licensing fees.
We have to go to a break. I am so sorry. I was waiting for you to get to a stopping point. We have to go to a break. We'll be right back.
Every moment counts if you're at risk or living with lung cancer. And anyone with lungs can get lung cancer. It causes more cancer deaths than breast, colon, and prostate combined. It can feel like a race against time. And while there may be moments where you question your next step, it's essential to know that you don't have to confront lung cancer alone. Through it all, Go-To for Lung Cancer is here for you. From screening, treatment, and survivorship support to finding the right care close to home, we are your community. As your friends, your guides, your teachers, your advocates, and your support system, Go-To is your go-to. Confronting lung cancer starts here. Visit goto.org today.
The enemy is everywhere. The fight is never ending, and yet you must continue the battle against dirt. Now there's an ally in the war to have a clean home. Sunday afternoon at 3, FM Talk 1065 will be Talking Dirty with David Lord. Brought to you by A&A Vacuum Mart. You'll get all the ammo you need to win the fight against dirt. Information on vacuum cleaner systems, tips and tools to make your job easier. Join us for Talking Dirty with David Lord. Sunday afternoon at 3 on FM Talk 1065. Welcome back to Sweet Home CannaBama. Now with all the information you want about cannabis, here's your host, Jennifer Boozer.
Welcome back, everybody. We're talking with Martin Smith and Jim Higdon, both from Kentucky. We only have about 12 minutes left, and I really want to make sure we get all this in. We've been talking about HB 532 and SB 223, both in Kentucky. And basically, if you had to sum it up into one phrase or two, SB 223 needs a stable, compliant supply chain in order to create this beverage carve out. And HB 532 creates that high grade supply chain. And so together they can basically makes a 2-lane system. SB 223 is the storefront. HB 532 is the farm that supplies it. HB 532 is the agricultural lane, and the other is the beverage retail lane. Martin, industrial hemp remains in its own lane. You know, we can't forget every time we have this conversation, we can't forget the other side of this is hempcrete, fiber, bioplastics, biodiesel, you know, all the things, anything made from cotton, wood, or petroleum can be made from the hemp plant. So there's also that, and separating those folks so that they don't have to go through the same rigors as the people who are producing for human consumption. So let's talk a little bit about that and how this is going to protect everybody from the farmer to people like Jim who are making products as well and selling them to the public through his business and online, and then stores like mine and all the others around the country who are strictly retail.
Yeah, so this is the reason why you want to have an open conversation and dialogue with the total industry. I've been supporting and helping to write legislation for the farmer to protect him, to help him build an industry. And, I'm so glad I haven't had to be in these other lanes that you guys, with HB 445 y'all had there and all of the other things that we just really want to continue to keep our agricultural definition. We want to be able to protect the farmer through remediation processes that are criminal punishment. And we want to be able to guarantee that the products that we do create have a quality standard, a marketplace that avoids all this craziness and chaos that is created. Just think about being an industrial hemp farmer. You plant your crop on a 7-inch row, as thick as you can get it, and you take it out before it even gets to flower or to making. And it's easy to distinguish. You can drive by and look at an industrial hemp crop as opposed to a medical, or an extracted human consumable production model. So letting these guys free and creating, that's what HB 532 does. It really says, okay, this is industrial hemp. This is a carve out for things that are consumable product lines. And, with that, we know you're going to go to flower. We know there's going to be agricultural variances, drought years, wind, and we want to be able to give you a process to remediate that product when it comes in above the 0.3 threshold because of agricultural variances. So it gives us a great variance on that to a 0.5, I believe the variance is. But that product has to go into remediation, which means you go in and you let the processor do what he does and formulates it below the 0.3. The process doesn't cause him to lose his farm or lose the crop or lose. So protecting all of the production values that our farmers need for this market to even begin to talk about intoxicating substances derived from it. I created that hemp bill or the hemp language in 2016 or 17 to protect the farmer or the extract. Basically, if you had an extract and it wasn't defined as legal. So then when I did that, it just created all of the loopholes that none of us farmers in the model even ever dreamed would get in our way we're over the counter. There's nothing that stops us. We're not even on the CSA.
Right.
So we're an agricultural product ready for market, have been ready for market. The conversation has been crazy around, the topic, and so HB 532 just puts the guardrails together for us to be ready for human consumption, across, not just the Medicare, even though it's going to be narrow, the out-of-pocket. Just think about President Trump saying it's going to be something that Medicare, so the out-of-pocket with grandmothers and everybody else, buying the product is a bigger market than what he's he's describing there. So given the validity and signaling to the insurance agencies and insurance company and farm insurance, so that this is a federally, and then he told the agencies to move quickly on getting this done. We've needed that for a long time. Where were you at in 2014 when the Farm Bill came out?
To have done it this way from the start. Yeah.
But we know, now that's the great thing. We know enough to protect the farmer. We know enough to protect the consumer. We know enough to write good legislation. And that's what HB 532 is. It's good legislation for protect the farmer. Jim helped me to improve it. He said, I sent it over to him and he said, well, there's one part here about it being not a supplement. Eventually it will be ruled upon. And so we put we changed the language to say when that happens, then the departments will promulgate regulation to meet that desire of the federal government to open that up. And so that gives us everything. I think that strengthened it, and ready for the future and ready for adoption across the country. So I appreciate you, Jim, for reading HB 532, the committee substitute, and pointing that out because it really did strengthen the bill.
Yeah. Jim, let me ask you this, because I know you are with the U.S. Hemp Roundtable and now you're the chairman. And then, of course, you're trying to pass legislation in your own state. What is the support like from the public? Because I know here in Alabama, we had a ton of public outcry with HB 445. I'm talking unprecedented numbers, and it didn't change anything for us here. How is it similar or different in Kentucky? And then, like I was on the Zoom call the other day for the national update. I think it was Haifa hosted, and I get all the emails from you guys at the roundtable. How are you finding support within the industry and then from the general public?
We have remarkable support from the public, from our customers, from legislators.
Yeah.
And it used to be we would have to, to Martin's point, we would have to educate legislators about our issue and what's going on and why we need regulation. And now it's less necessary to do that because legislators know that we're on. And that's not just true in Frankfurt at the Kentucky state level. We're getting that when we go to Congress.
Right.
But, every time I start a conversation on policy with a congressional staffer, I'm like, okay, where are you at on this issue? What do you know? Because I don't want to start somewhere that's, is too elementary for you, but also just don't want to jump into what's happening today if you don't know what's going on.
Right.
And a lot of times in the past, we had to start from the beginning and work up where we were at. And now, these staffers are like, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, and where are you at? Are you here or here?
Right.
It makes those conversations much easier because we're dealing with an educated audience. And Capitol Hill, as you know, is run by well-connected 25-year-olds who are, recent college graduates in a second job.
Yeah, I have a 24-and-a-half-year-old son, so that's why it made me laugh, because you're right. The next generation is in the building,
And they're taking notes, and they'll talk to their boss at the end of the day about the meetings that they had. And here's the notes that they took about these meetings that they had. And so you're really at the mercy of these young adults who basically filter all of that information from all the meetings they had that day up the chain, and eventually gets to gets to the member. But those conversations have become much easier to have because people know that we're on the hook.
Right.
And so, people are coming to the table with different solutions.
Yeah.
And, I appreciate, Martin and Representative Moser's, attempt to find a solution here. I just received some model legislation from Texas from a law firm trying to do, a similar thing that Martin has conceived of here, which is, how do we lay the groundwork for the Medicare reimbursement plan at the state?
Yeah.
Assuming that Congress can figure this out so that there's a path ahead.
Real quick before we have to go, because we were about to have to go, I don't want to leave without you telling us, how can we find you and support you?
Thank you. Go to cornbreadhemp.com/action. Cornbreadhemp.com /action will get you an email sign up form, and then we can keep you up to date on everything that's happening in the policy world. You can also go to hempsupporter.com. That's the Hemp Roundtable website, and you can sign up for alerts there as well. And you can activate at the federal level and in your state.
Thank you so much to both of you, Martin and Jim. This was a fascinating hour. I think we should do this again sometime.
Whenever you're ready. Good.
All right. God bless you both, and God bless American grown hemp. Good night.